Imagine biting into a burger at your favorite 1970s diner, only to realize, decades later, that diner no longer exists. These weren't just restaurants. They were neon-lit memories, flavors of a generation. And now, they're all gone. What happened? Why did they vanish? And which ones might have made you rich if they'd survived? Stay tuned, because some of these names will surprise you. 1. Howard Johnson's. Once upon a time, Howard Johnson's was as American as apple pie. With its bright orange rooftops, turquoise tiles, and promises of 28 ice cream flavors, it was the gold standard for family dining on the open road. Every family road trip had a Hojo's stop. It was predictable, comfortable, and, at its peak, utterly unstoppable. But by the 1970s, the cracks began to show. The food, bland. The decor, stuck in the 1950s, and the menu, more nostalgia than innovation. While fast food chains were modernizing and speeding up, Howard Johnson's clung to the past. Microwaved meals, declining service, and rising prices drove away loyal customers. Franchisees started bailing. New generations didn't relate to the brand. And slowly, it all unraveled. By the early 2000s, a once great empire had crumbled into just a single location, a monument to a time when simpler meant better, until it didn't. 2. Sambo's. It started with pancakes and a catchy name. In 1957, Sambo's was born, a breakfast chain that promised fast service, low prices, and heaping stacks of syrup-soaked comfort food. By the 1970s, it had exploded across America. More than 1,100 locations. Open 24 hours, beloved for its murals, kid-friendly menus, and endless coffee refills. But the name, Sambo's, carried a dark shadow. Originally inspired by the 1899 children's book The Story of Little Black Sambo, it soon became the subject of nationwide backlash. Civil rights groups protested, communities pushed back, and the brand refused to change. As the social climate evolved, Sambo's didn't, and what once seemed like harmless branding suddenly became a PR disaster. Customers stopped coming, lawsuits followed, and locations began to shutter at a rapid pace. By the early 80s, most had closed or rebranded. Only one original Sambo's remains, a controversial echo of a restaurant chain that failed to read the room and paid the price. 3. Steak and ale. Dark wood paneling, dim lighting, candles on every table. In the 1970s, steak and ale wasn't just a restaurant. It was where you went to feel fancy. Created by the same man who launched Chili's, Steak and Ale promised fine dining at a price middle America could afford. Sirloin for $5, unlimited salad bar, and waiters dressed like they were serving royalty. For a while, it worked. People loved the atmosphere, loved the illusion of elegance without the cost. But then, the 1980s hit. Palates changed. Chains like Outback and Olive Garden brought a fresher, more modern look. And Steak and Ale, it stayed the same. The wood looked old. The dim lighting felt gloomy. And the menu, outdated, uninspired, and trapped in the past. By the early 2000s, Steak and Ale was nearly extinct. A few revival attempts came and went. But the steakhouse that once made people feel rich couldn't keep up with the times. 4. Red Barn. From a distance, it looked like a giant barn dropped into a parking lot. Red siding, white trim, a roof shaped like a silo. Red Barn was unmistakable, and for a moment in the 70s it was unstoppable. It served burgers, fried chicken, and fish sandwiches before most people had even heard of McDonald's. It had a salad bar before that was trendy, and its commercials featured a singing tomato and onion in overalls. Quirky, yes, but it worked. At its peak, Red Barn had over 400 locations across America. It was fast, it was friendly, and it felt different. But as the fast food wars heated up, Red Barn fell behind. It didn't evolve. Its quirky branding became outdated. Its buildings, once charming, looked more and more like novelty relics. Then came corporate buyouts, mergers, closures. By the early 80s, the barn doors had shut for good, and another roadside memory faded into America's rearview mirror. 5. Gino's Hamburgers. It was the fast food chain with a football legend's name. Founded by NFL Hall of Famer Gino Marchetti, Gino's Hamburgers wasn't just about burgers, it was about building a hometown empire. In the 1970s, Gino's was booming across the Mid-Atlantic. Known for its hearty burgers, signature sirloiner sandwich, and tie-in deals with Kentucky Fried Chicken, it was a local favorite with national ambition. But as McDonald's and Burger King spread like wildfire, Gino's struggled to compete on scale. It didn't have the flashy ads, the streamlined systems, or the deep corporate pockets. By the late 70s, the cracks were showing. Menus felt tired, stores looked worn, and the brand started to feel stuck in a past that was moving too fast. In the early 80s, Marriott bought out the chain and rebranded most locations into Roy Rogers. The Gino's name disappeared overnight. What began with a football hero and a hometown dream ended as another casualty in the ruthless fast food wars of the 70s and 80s. 6. Lums. Where else could you get a hot dog steamed in beer? Lums was that kind of place, quirky, bold, and proudly different. Born in Florida, the chain grew fast in the 60s and 70s, offering comfort food with a twist. Beer-steamed dogs, fried clams, and sandwiches with funny names. It was the kind of place that didn't take itself too seriously. And for a while, that worked. At its peak, Lums had over 400 locations nationwide. Families came for the casual vibe, tourists loved the novelty, and the menu had just enough weird to make it memorable. But then came the decline. Ownership changed hands. New management couldn't hold on to the charm. The menu got sloppy, the quality dropped, and the quirks stopped being cute. By the late 70s, the chain was already in trouble. One by one, Lums locations closed. By the 80s, it was almost completely gone. Today, only the memories remain of a restaurant that dared to steam its hot dogs in beer and still couldn't stay afloat. 7. Royal Castle. Before White Castle took over the slider game, there was Royal Castle, a southern staple that once served millions of tiny burgers, one steamed bun at a time. Founded in Miami in the 1930s, Royal Castle hit its stride in the 60s and early 70s. Its slogan, "Fit for a King." And for a while, it was. Customers lined up for its 15-cent sliders, signature birch beer, and no-frills counter service. It was fast, it was cheap, and it had a loyal base of blue-collar diners who loved the simplicity. But by the mid-70s, cracks started to show. The rise of national chains like Burger King and Wendy's brought aggressive competition. Royal Castle didn't innovate, didn't remodel, didn't adapt. The food quality slipped, sanitation issues surfaced, and the once loyal crowd slowly vanished. By the end of the 70s, Royal Castle had collapsed under its own outdated weight. Only a handful of locations survived, and today it's remembered more as a regional relic than a reigning fast food king. 8. Minnie Pearl's Chicken. It had a catchy name, a famous face, and a dream to rival KFC. Minnie Pearl's Chicken burst onto the scene in the late 1960s, backed by investors who believed they could turn a country music icon into a fast food legend. With Minnie Pearl's smiling face and wide-brimmed hat on every sign, the chain grew fast. Too fast. Hundreds of franchises were sold in a frenzy of hype and hope. But there was one major problem. They didn't have a plan. The food, inconsistent. The operations, disorganized. There were no standardized recipes, no training, no systems. Some locations served canned green beans, others had different menus altogether. Customers were confused. Franchisees were furious. And the lawsuits came rolling in. By the early 1970s, the collapse was complete. Most locations shut down in under 5 years. What was meant to be the next big Southern food empire ended as one of the fastest failures in fast food history. Minnie Pearl herself had almost nothing to do with it, but her name faded right alongside the last bucket of cold, soggy chicken. 9. Burger Chef. Before Happy Meals, before value menus, there was Burger Chef, a chain that was for a moment McDonald's biggest rival. At its peak, Burger Chef had over 1,200 locations, second only to the Golden Arches. They introduced the first kids' meal, complete with a toy, years before McDonald's copied the idea. Their slogan, "We'll always treat you right." And for a while, they did. They offered customizable burgers, a self-service condiment bar, and prices so low they made Ronald McDonald sweat. But behind the scenes, the chain was cracking. Parent companies changed, budgets got tighter, and competitors caught up. By the late 70s, Burger Chef started losing ground. McDonald's marketing machine couldn't be beat, and Burger Chef's once revolutionary ideas became industry standard. Eventually, the company was sold off. Many locations were converted into Hardee's, and the brand that once changed the game simply vanished. Today, few remember that the fast food world nearly had a different king. 10. Sambo's. Once a nationwide chain with over 100 locations, Sambo's was known for its pancakes, low prices, and 24/7 diner vibes. It was a cozy place, booths filled with families, waitresses who knew your name, and portions that could feed a trucker. But behind the syrup and smiles, there was a storm brewing. The name Sambo S came from the children S book, The Story of Little Black Sambo, a title already outdated by the 70s and increasingly criticized for racist overtones. Protests grew, activists pushed back, and customers started walking away, not just because of the name but because the chain refused to change it. Executives tried to defend it. They said it had nothing to do with race, but the damage was done. By the early 80s, lawsuits, boycotts, and financial decline buried the brand. Stores closed, franchises rebranded, and Sambo's became a cautionary tale of ignoring the changing times. Today, only one original location remains, rebuilt under a new name, and the rest faded into the shadows of history. 11. Pup and Taco. Even the name makes you do a double take. Pup and Taco, a fast food chain that dared to combine hot dogs and tacos under one roof. It started in Southern California, serving up chili dogs, crispy tacos, pastrami sandwiches, and giant sodas. It was quirky. It was fast. And for a time, it worked. Teenagers pulled in with muscle cars, families grabbed food to go, and the brand carved out a space between Taco Bell and A&W. By the 1970s, Pup and Taco had more than 100 locations, but then the giant arrived. Taco Bell, backed by PepsiCo, was expanding aggressively. Pup and Taco couldn't match their marketing budget, couldn't scale as fast, and by 1984, most locations were sold to Taco Bell. The sign came down, the quirky name faded, and Pup and Taco became just another forgotten footnote in fast food history. Still, for those who remember the taste of a chili dog next to a taco, it was a beautiful, weird little moment in American dining. 12. Chicken Delight. Don't cook tonight. Call Chicken Delight. That jingle echoed through American suburbs in the 60s and 70s. Before fast food chicken was dominated by the Colonel, there was Chicken Delight, one of the earliest chains to offer home delivery of fried chicken. Their model was simple. Franchises popped up fast. Menus were tight. The food, affordable and hot at your door. By the late 60s, Chicken Delight had over 1,000 locations nationwide. Families loved it. Delivery was a novelty, and it felt like the future. But the future wasn't kind. Franchisees rebelled against the company's high supply costs and lack of support. Legal battles erupted. The food quality became inconsistent. And the novelty of delivery? Other chains caught on, fast. By the mid-70s, stores were closing left and right. The brand faded, one location at a time. Today, Chicken Delight still technically exists, in a handful of small towns. But the empire it once promised is long gone. 13. Henry's Hamburgers. In the early 1960s, before most Americans had even heard of McDonald's, there was Henry's Hamburgers, a rising star in the world of fast food. Owned by the same company behind Borden Dairy, Henry's was created to drive milkshake sales. But it did more than that. It exploded. Their slogan, "A Henry's, a day keeps hunger away." With cheap burgers, fast service, and catchy promotions, Henry's quickly expanded to over 200 locations nationwide. It was sleek, it was modern, it was the future, or so it seemed. But then the fast food titans arrived. McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's all came swinging with deeper pockets, better branding, and tighter operations. Henry's couldn't keep up. Stores started to close. The company shifted focus. And within a decade, the once booming chain had all but vanished. Today, only one Henry's Hamburgers still exists, in Benton Harbor, Michigan. A lonely reminder of a fast food empire that almost was. 14. Gino's Hamburgers. Backed by a football legend and packed with East Coast flair, Gino's Hamburgers was more than just another burger joint. Founded by Gino Marchetti, a Hall of Fame NFL player, the chain quickly grew in the Mid-Atlantic region. With juicy burgers, hot fries, and signature Gino giant sandwiches, it carved out a loyal fan base, especially in places like Baltimore and Philly. But Gino's had a secret weapon. It owned the exclusive franchise rights to Kentucky Fried Chicken in many of its locations. That's right, walk into a Gino's, and you could get both a burger and the Colonel's chicken. For a time, it worked brilliantly. Double the options, double the traffic, double the profits. But then things got complicated. Managing two different brands in one building wasn't easy. Operational costs ballooned, customer expectations clashed. And as national chains like McDonald's streamlined and scaled, Gino's started slipping behind. By the early 80s, Gino's sold most of its locations to Roy Rogers. The name disappeared, and the legend faded. Only a handful of revival locations remain today, but the glory days? Long gone, lost to time and tougher competition. 15. Red Barn. With a logo shaped like an actual barn and giant windows letting in golden light, Red Barn didn't just sell fast food, it offered charm. Founded in the early 1960s, Red Barn quickly became one of the most recognizable chains of the decade. They had it all: burgers, fried chicken, fish sandwiches, and even a salad bar. Years before anyone else thought salads belonged in fast food. Their signature burgers? Big Barney, Barnbuster, and Chicken Barn. All quirky, all huge. Red Barn had a playful feel, complete with commercials featuring cartoon animals and catchy jingles. At their peak, they had over 400 locations across the U.S. and Canada. But behind the barn doors, things weren't so cozy. The company changed hands multiple times. Corporate vision got muddled. And with no clear strategy, Red Barn struggled to keep up with aggressive marketing from McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's. By the early 1980s, most Red Barn locations were either closed or sold off. No official farewell, no revival. Just one of the most beloved chains quietly fading into memory. For those who grew up with it, the loss still stings. 16. White Tower Hamburgers. Long before White Castle was a household name, there was White Tower, a chain that looked eerily familiar, because it was almost an exact copy. Founded in the 1920s, White Tower mimicked White Castle's aesthetic. White porcelain buildings, uniformed staff, and 5-cent hamburgers. They didn't even try to hide it. And it worked. By the 1950s, White Tower had over 230 locations across the Midwest and East Coast. They served sliders, fries, and malts, cheap, fast, and consistent. But imitation comes with a cost. White Castle sued them and won. White Tower was forced to change its building design and signage. That legal blow was just the beginning. As the decades rolled on, larger chains modernized. White Tower didn't. They clung to the past, while McDonald's and Burger King surged into the future. By the late 1970s, their locations began closing rapidly, and by the 80s, only a few remained, mostly in Ohio. Today, White Tower is a ghost of what it once was. Not quite a pioneer, not quite a copy. Just a forgotten name from a burger war that it never truly won. 17. Minnie Pearl's Chicken. In the world of celebrity-endorsed fast food, few stories are as bizarre and short-lived as Minnie Pearl's Chicken. Launched in the late 1960s, this chain was backed by country comedian Minnie Pearl and entrepreneur John J. Hooker. Their mission? Take on KFC head-to-head. And for a moment, it looked like they might do it. The company raised millions from eager investors. Hundreds of franchises were sold. Big promises were made. But behind the scenes? Chaos. The chicken recipe was inconsistent. Franchises opened too fast, with no real infrastructure. And, worst of all, there was no central supply chain, which meant stores ran out of key ingredients constantly. Then came the scandal. An SEC investigation revealed shady accounting and overhyped earnings. Investors pulled out. The company collapsed almost overnight. Most locations shut down within just a couple years. Minnie Pearl, who had nothing to do with the business side, was heartbroken by the fallout. Today, Minnie Pearl Isa's Chicken is remembered more for its spectacular failure than for any food it ever served. It's a cautionary tale. How fast fame fades when built on hype, not quality. 18. The All-American Burger. Even if you've never stepped foot in one, you've probably seen the All-American Burger, because it was famously featured in the cult classic Fast Times at Ridgemont High. This Southern California-based chain began in the 1970s, offering classic Americana, burgers, fries, shakes, and red, white, and blue branding that screamed patriotism. The vibe was laid back, the food was solid, and for a brief moment, it felt like this place might become the next In-N-Out or McDonald's. But it didn't. Why? Because the All-American Burger never scaled. It remained a local favorite, with only a handful of locations that couldn't compete against giants expanding across California. There was no franchising push, no nationwide ambition, and slowly, competitors took over their territory. By the 1980s, the chain had mostly vanished. Their last known location eventually closed, leaving only nostalgia and a movie cameo behind. For a restaurant called All-American, its story ended far too quietly. 19. Naugles. Prepare food fresh, serve customers fast, keep things clean. That was the simple motto of Naugles, a fast food chain that once gave Taco Bell a serious run for its money. Founded by former Del Taco executive Dick Naugle in 1970, Naugles focused on Mexican-American classics, tacos, burritos, and burgers, served hot and fast 24 hours a day, and it worked. By the mid-1980s, the chain had over 200 locations across the western UCCUNES. Its 24/7 drive-through service was revolutionary, and people loved the food. Not flashy, just good. Then came the merger. In 1988, Del Taco bought out Naugles. What followed was a quiet erasure. Most Naugles locations were either converted or closed. The brand faded into corporate paperwork and memory. But fans didn't forget. In fact, years later, a grassroots movement brought it back. A few Revival Naugles locations now exist in California, using the original recipes. Still, the Naugles most people remember, the bold, scrappy rival to Taco Bell, is long gone. Another 1970s favorite, eaten alive by bigger fish. 20. Pup and Taco. With a name like Pup and Taco, you knew it was going to be quirky. Founded in the late 1950s and booming through the 1970s, this chain was a strange but beloved mix of American and Mexican fast food. You could walk in and order a chili dog, a taco, and a root beer float. And people did, by the millions. At its peak, Pup and Taco had over 100 locations, mostly in California and the Southwest. It was fast, cheap, and weirdly satisfying. Hot dogs, tacos, pastrami sandwiches. Nothing was off the table. Even pop culture took notice. Chevy Chase famously name-dropped Pup and Taco in Fletch. It had that niche cult status few chains ever achieve. But then came Taco Bell. In 1984, Taco Bell's parent company bought up nearly all Pup and Taco locations. They wanted the real estate, not the brand. Pup and Taco quietly disappeared. Its buildings were repainted, menus erased, and what was once one of the most unique fast food joints in America was gone. Today, the name lives on in jokes and nostalgia threads, a relic of when fast food wasn't just fast, it was fun. 21. Sambo's. Of all the restaurants lost to time, few carry as controversial a legacy as Sambo's. Founded in 1957, the chain rapidly expanded through the 1960s and 70s, peaking with over 1,100 locations across the U.S. It served the usual diner fare: pancakes, eggs, burgers. But it wasn't the food that made headlines. It was the name and the imagery. Sambo S was a reference to the 1899 children's book The Story of Little Black Sambo. The restaurant used themes, decor, and mascots directly tied to the book's racially insensitive illustrations. And as the civil rights movement gained momentum, the backlash grew. Protests followed. Communities demanded name changes. Some locations tried rebranding to The Jolly Tiger or No Place Like Sam, Eat Ewes. But the damage was done. Between the social pressure and overexpansion, Sambo's couldn't keep up. By the early 1980s, most locations closed. Only one original Sambo's remained, in Santa Barbara, California. And in 2020, that final location dropped the name too, bringing a definitive end to one of the most infamous chapters in American restaurant history. Sambo's wasn't just a restaurant that faded, it was a reminder. What once passed as normal isn't always worth remembering fondly. The 1970s gave us bell-bottoms, disco, and a fast food revolution. But not every restaurant made it out alive. From celebrity-backed disasters to culturally tone-deaf branding, from tacos and chili dogs to pancake houses caught in controversy, these 21 forgotten restaurants remind us that even the most beloved places can vanish in a flash. Some were victims of bad business. Others fell to changing tastes, and a few were simply too strange to last. But they all left a mark on American pop culture, on our palates, and in our memories. So the next time you pass a modern drive-thru, take a moment to remember the oddball, ambitious, and often bizarre chains that faded into history. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more trips down memory lane. See you in the next video.